Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see about psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is study of mental and emotional process in every individual people. Psychoanalysis and psychotherapy owe their existence to Sigmund Freud. It is under the influence of Sigmund Freud and other writers like Carl Jung that modern writers made a certain shift in their writing techniques as well as their content. We have D.H. Lawrence trying to frankly explore the notion of mother fixation or Oedipus complex in the novel Sons and Lovers. James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and Mrs. Richardson evolved the technique of stream of consciousness. William Shakespeare's Hamlet is one of the most psychological complex characters in literature. In terms of the use of psychoanalytic theories in literary studies, it has moved through three main phases in its pursuit of literary unconsciousness. One, on the author and also the character by corollary, on the reader and on the text. It starts with Sigmund Freud's analysis of literary work, where the relationship between author and text is analogous to dreamers and their text. It is modified by their later theorists from a psychoanalytic reader response criticism, where the reader's relation to the text came to the forefront and is contested by Carl Jung's archetypal criticism, in which the literary work is a representation of the relationship between the personal and the collective unconsciousness, the images, myths, symbols, archetypes of past cultures. Most recently, psychoanalytic criticism has been remodeled in the context of post-structuralism by the works of French scholar Jacques Lacan and his followers. Sigmund Freud was a practicing psychoanalyst from Austria, and his biggest contribution has been his newer way of looking at the way human mind, behavior, and action is guided or impacted by his sexual desires. To understand this, Freud distinguished the human mind in three quarters: conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. Freud is of the opinion that our thought processes, actions are to a larger extent impacted by the unconscious. According to him, due to the social taboos attached to certain sexual impulses, many of these impulses are suppressed and repressed from our conscious mind. These repressed impulses find their way in the formation of the unconscious: it, ego, and superego. Freud also tried to analyze the human mind by showing how our mind has three psychic zones: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is linked with the human libido or sexual energy, which does not distinguish between the good and the evil because it only aspires for pleasure by satisfying the instinctual needs. It does not know any ethics, legality, etc. The ego regulates the instinctual drives and stops us from destructive human behavior. The ego has been termed as the reality principle. The superego is the moral censoring agency in the sense that whereas its impulses are restrained by the ego from the point of view of the practicality, the superego restrains it from an idealistic and moral point of view. Thus, if id is the pleasure principle and the ego is the reality principle, then superego can be termed as the morality principle. Oedipus complex. Freud defines mother fixation or Oedipus complex as the little man wants his mother all to himself. This little man is a baby and it's a boy. Finds his father in his way, becomes receptive when the latter takes upon himself to caress her, and shows his satisfaction when the father goes away or is absent. Dream is being interpreted by Freud as a certain fulfillment of human beings' repressed and suppressed desires and wishes. According to Freud, condensation, displacement, representation, and secondary revision are the four processes involved in the dream. Condensation happens when the manifest dream has a smaller content. Therefore, it is abbreviated. By displacement, the dream puts itself in disguise. Representation refers to the transposition of thought into imagery. As a latent dream, thoughts are turned into a collection of sensory images and visual scenes. Secondary revision is a significant part where the mind attempts to order, to revise, to supplement the content of the dream to give it an intelligible shape. Later, Freud excluded secondary revision from his interpretation of dreams. The Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung's primary focus is myth. For Jung, myths are shared by all members of a society and it becomes a part of our collective unconscious. Jung is also against Freud's way of interpreting dream and the perception of literature or art. For Carl Jung, the clues of self-realization in myths are the archetypes. An archetype is a primordial image that exists in what Jung called the collective unconsciousness, which according to him is transculture and transhistorical. Based on Carl Jung's theory of archetypes, literary critics have developed the brand of criticism known as archetypal criticism. The most significant work in archetypal criticism is Northrup's Anatomy of Criticism. Jacques Lacan is a French scholar who reworked on the psychological theories propagated by Freud, but in the light of Swiss linguist Ferdinand Saussure's theory of structurization of language. Lacan's first major theoretical publication is On the Mirror Stage as Formative of the I. His mirror stage theory has been as influential as Freud's Oedipus complex. Anna Freud, following her father Sigmund Freud, she developed an early interest in psychoanalysis. Her interest to study the ego and the mechanism of defense, published as the director of Vienna Psychoanalytic Training Institute, Anna Freud's study of defense mechanisms moved away from the traditional basis of psychoanalytical thought. She also expanded psychoanalytic work in the direction of child psychoanalysis, which she initiated along with Melanie Klein. In 1947, Anna Freud and Kate Friedlander established the Hampshire Child Therapy courses. Her other major works are on defense mechanisms, normality, and pathology in childhood. Melanie Klein Test, Australian-born British child psychoanalyst whose pioneering work shed new light on the emotional life of infants and children, especially in the understanding and treatment of narcotic disorders and the psychosis. Following World War I, Melanie Klein developed the technique of play therapy. The way children play with toys reveal earlier infantile fantasies and anxieties which affected a child's developing ego, superego, and sexuality to bring about emotional disorders. Major works are The Psychoanalysis of Children, Contribution to Psychoanalysis, Narrative of a Child Analysis, Our Adult World, and other essays. Alfred Adler, he is acknowledged among the co-founders of the psychoanalytic movement and the founder of the School of Individual Psychology. In 1956, Adler developed a scheme of the so-called personality types. His major works are The Neurotic Character, The Practice and Theory of Individual Psychology, Understanding Human Nature, What Life Could Mean to You. Freudian criticism is the unconscious, the desires, and the defenses. Sigmund Freud began his psychoanalytic work in the 1880s while attempting to treat behavioral disorders in his Venice patients. He dubbed the disorders dysteria and began treating them by listening to his patients talk through their problems. Based on this work, Freud asserted that people's behavior is affected by the unconscious. Freud believed that one's unconscious was influenced by childhood events. Freud organized these events into development stages involving relationships with parents and drives of desire and pleasure, where children focus on different parts of the body, starting with the mouth, shifting to the oral, anal, and phallic phases. These stages reflect basic levels of desire, but they also involve fear of loss, that is, loss of genitals, loss of affection from parents, loss of life, and repression. To keep all of this conflict buried in our unconscious, Freud argued that we develop defenses, selective perception, selective memory, denial, displacement, projection, regression, fear of intimacy, and fear of death, among others. Freud maintained that our desires and our unconscious conflicts give rise to three areas of the mind that wrestle for dominance as we grow from infancy to childhood to adulthood. Id, the location of the drives, or libido; ego, one of the major defenses against the powers of the drives and home of the defenses listed above; and superego, the area of unconscious that douses judgment. Jungian criticism. Jungian criticism attempts to explore the connections between literature and what Carl Jung, who is a student of Freud, called the collective unconscious of the human race. Jungian criticism, closely related to Freudian theory because of its connection to psychoanalysis, assumes that all stories and symbols are based on mythic models from mankind's past. Based on these commonalities, Jung developed archetypal myths, the Zyxi. These archetypes are the shadow, the anima, the animus, and the spirit. Beneath the shadow is the enigma, the feminine side of the male self, and the animus, the corresponding masculine side of the female self. The self represents all that is unique within a human being. The self is what makes that person an I. The self cannot exist without the other archetypes, and the other archetypes cannot exist without the self. The self is also the part which grows and changes as a person grows throughout life. The self can be summed up as the ideal form a person wishes to be. The shadow represents the traits which lie deep within us. The shadow is a very important trait because for one to truly know themselves, one must know all the traits, including those which lie beneath the common, that is the shadow. The enigma is seen as the feminine side within a man. The animus is seen as the masculine side within a woman. The persona is the way we present to the world a mask which projects the ego from negative images. Some view this as the opposite of the shadow, which is not entirely true. This is just the face that is put on for the world, not our deepest internal secrets and desires, that is the self. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box, like the video, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe and support. Thank you.